Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Inside the Pigskin. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and I have an incredible crew tonight. And we're going to be talking about that mega NFL TV deal a little bit later in the broadcast. But I always like bringing on newcomers, especially when one of them is Spencer Tomset, the guy who had to deal with me at the National Sports Media Association Awards dinner in December, and Spencer was a jack of all trades and my biggest fan. He was helping us get YouTube subscribers. He was taking pictures. The guy was helping me with my tie, and you know what? That's good enough there. So Spencer, the man with the pipes, according to what is it, John?
John Walton, the
John
voice of
Walton, no
Washington
relation
Capitol.
to the John Walton on the Waltons. All right, Spencer, tell the audience a little bit about you.
I would rephrase it to not dealing with you, having the pleasure of being alongside you during the entirety of the NSMA Awards weekend. It's not as bad as he makes it out to be, but play-by-play broadcaster primarily. I'm finishing up my master's degree at Middle Tennessee State University. I've done a few games for them on ESPN Plus to this point, and got some plans for the fall that are going to be announced in the coming weeks and everything. But primarily a guy who his ultimate aspiration is to call the Super Bowl on one of the networks one day, and all while reinvesting in those that have invested in me. And this is just one of many steps to reinvest in people, especially for all the people that Scott introduced me to with the NSMA weekend and all that. But looking forward to talking some football with you all, and I consider it a privilege every second that I'm on the show.
Yeah, let me tell you, Spencer hung out with me the whole weekend. We had a good old time. I'm telling you, hanging out with Spencer was like the fountain of youth, man. Hanging out with this guy, getting him to keep up. And every time I got near somebody, Spencer knew, okay, give me the phone. I know what you want me to do. Oh, man, it don't get any better than that when it comes to getting into places like that. All I can tell you is we had a whale of a time, and that's one of the reasons that he's on this show as well. So with that said, we got Spencer Tomset, and we have JB Ellis. Welcome back, JB.
How's it going, Scott, Steve, Spencer?
Doing good. And the man with the virtual background, named after a razor, Gillette. Okay, I hope I don't get nailed for copyright issues mentioning that, Steve Ballesteri.
Hey, guys. Yeah, the reason I put this virtual background up is my house behind me is a mess right now. So
Same with my background.
Yeah, therefore, it looks like, I'm standing in Gillette in the bright sunshine. But it was actually a picture I took before a preseason game when there was nobody in the stadium. So you can't really tell from this view. But I took it a couple of years ago. And so I figured, this would make a cool background, especially for a football show.
Well, we're going to be graduating. We're going to be getting a brand new banner with the South Florida Tribune coming up pretty soon. So we're about a day or two away. But meanwhile, I have no problem broadcasting from the friendly confines. Everybody in this business does. I got four topics I want to get to before we get to the big one. And I know that these are some that everybody should be familiar with. And we'll talk about the New England Patriots acquiring Devontae Parker from the Miami Dolphins. Let me break down the gist of the transaction, and then we'll let Mr. Patriot talk about it. The Dolphins will be sending Parker and a 2022 fifth-round pick to New England for a third-round pick in 2023, trading in the division. And we'll talk about the fact that when we look at Parker's contract in 2022, he's going to get $5.65 million in base, $500,000 for in-game roster bonuses. In 2023, that kicks up to $5.75 million with the base, and the $500,000 kicks in as well. Obviously, what that really means, Steve, is the man does get hut. Okay, so let's talk about the fact that the Dolphins and the Patriots, it's a divisional trade. Do you put much stock in it? And what's your assessment of the trade overall, Steve?
I think it was a win for both teams. And that sounds like I'm sitting on the fence, but I really believe that because, for one, the Patriots, that's the kind of wide receiver they've been coveting. That's why they drafted N'Keal Harry a couple of years ago. They wanted a big, physical, fast wide receiver who can make contested catches and stretch the field not only horizontally but vertically. That's the one thing they lacked. I mean, last year, Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson faced the most 8-man or more at times boxes in the league. And because of that, Mac Jones, a lot of times, teams did not fear the Patriots' deep passing game. And a lot of those 8-man boxes resulted in blitzes against Mac Jones. Now, part of that was the fact that, yes, he's a rookie quarterback, and that's what teams tend to do. But the fact was that, the passing game lacked that big, deep threat. I hate using that, but that's kind of what Parker is. So I think on that aspect, he brings that level. I mean, he's career average of 14 yards per catch. He does have injury concerns, but I think it's a win for the Patriots because that's what they've been lacking. I think they'll still draft a wide receiver with some speed early in the draft rather than later. But you look at Miami, because people say, why did they trade in the division? Well, they ended up believing they got the most from the Patriots that they were going to get. I don't think I know Dallas was involved. Maybe Atlanta was another team that was rumored. But, when you look at the big picture, the Patriots gave them a 3rd-round pick for Parker and a 5th. I don't think they were going to get that from Dallas or Atlanta. So I think it works out for Miami as well, because once they, signed Tyreek Hill, I think the writing was on the wall that Parker, wasn't going to be there much longer.
Spencer, you have some thoughts on the trade?
Yeah, I agree exactly with what Steve said there with when they acquired Tyreek Hill, the writing was on the wall there because, when you look at the details of the trade and everything, it makes sense because obviously Tyreek Hill and that blockbuster trade from Kansas City. And, think about it this way. You got Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and Gesicki all on the offensive side of the ball now for the Miami Dolphins. Now last year, of course, everyone talks about, how Buffalo Bills are the dominant team in the AFC East. Now the Dolphins have a chance to make an argument for being the champions of the AFC East. Of course, the Patriots are starting to make some moves in that regard with, of course, acquiring Devontae Parker. But now it's a lot more interesting for the AFC East as a whole to see how they're going to perform and how they're going to be matched up against other teams. And, of course, we don't talk about the Jets, but it's it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. And, I'm excited. I know you guys talked about it in the previous show about Coach Bowles and the unfortunate exit that he had from the Miami Dolphins. But it'll be interesting to see how Mike McDaniel adapts to these great weapons he has, and he's got on the offensive side. He's got such a plethora of amazing weapons to choose from and different offensive schemes to do. So I would say for Mike McDaniel, it's his offense to lose games with the weapons that he has.
All right, JB.
I'm not a fan of Miami making their division rival stronger. You're giving New England a quality receiver that's only going to help Mac Jones develop. I get that you didn't need him when you pick up Tyreek Hill from Kansas City and you had to do something with him. And you probably got the most from it with New England. But at the same time, I have a problem helping your division rival. You don't want to make the guy you're going to go up against twice a year and you're battling for that 6th or 7th spot in the playoffs stronger. So in that respect, I think it was a bad move. Like Spencer said, McDaniel's got a great offense now with Tyreek Hill, Waddle, and Gesicki. If Tua could do what I think Tua could do, and they give him the right shot, I think they have a good shot of having a phenomenal offense. And if they keep their defense where it's been trending, they're going to be a good team. But at the same time, they help the Patriots get better. And, we all know about Bill Belichick. The guy knows how to get the right pieces. And they don't have to be superstars. He gets them there, and they perform at levels that nobody's seen before. So we'll see what happens. I'm not a big fan of the idea.
Yeah, you know what? I'll go along with you, JB. I'm not crazy about the idea of changing within the division. I've seen it so many times in the black and blue, the Lions and the Packers, and we see a lot of trades or signings from within. But if indeed Steve is right, which I know he is, that's the best trade that they could get for him, so be it. A lot of it will have to do with what the return is on those draft choices down the road, and some of them are this year. But no, for the most part, I'm with you all the way, JB. Trading within the division, seeing a guy twice a year, to me, makes me a little bit nervous. So we're going to stay in the division, and we're going to talk about Matt Patricia and Joe Judge as the offensive coaches. And let me say, offensive coaches, there are no coordinators to replace Josh McDaniels. Good or bad for Mac Jones, Steve?
Well, I mean, he lost Josh McDaniels, so that's bad because I think McDaniels worked with him. I thought they got a lot out of Mac Jones for a rookie quarterback last year. And kudos to Jones. I thought he handled a lot of pressure that was thrown on him pretty well. I don't think he was great, but I thought he was a lot better than we expected as a rookie. I think he'll only get better. However, losing Josh McDaniels is a blow. I mean, he's been with the Patriots for several years. I mean, he had that short break for a while, but he's basically been with them for over a decade. And running the offense, it's going to have a much different look to it this year. Now, Matt Patricia, actually, when he started with New England back in, I want to say 2005, he was a tight ends coach. That's where he started. Then Belichick switched him over to the defense. Joe Judge, I mean, he's considered an offensive assistant, and whatever that means, I have no idea, because I think Belichick hired him as that to protect his paycheck that he's getting from the Giants. I think that's why they use that particular title. And Bill said last week, talking to the media, he's not big on titles. So I think he's going to be more involved with the offense this year. I actually think that the offensive coordinator in waiting is the current tight ends coach, Nick Calley. I think Nick Calley is going to be the play caller this year. I think they've been grooming him toward that. One of the things that we've seen in the past when Belichick's grooming a position coach for, to move up, you'll see it sometimes during training camp or in a preseason game. He'll let that particular position coach call the plays. They did that a little bit last summer with Calley. I think he's going to be the guy calling the plays, but the offense is going to look a lot different. They lost McDaniels, and I think that's a huge loss for them. And how well Patricia and Joe Judge work out is anybody's guess. Now, everyone always says up in New England, well, Bill has a plan and he knows what he's doing. But in this case, I mean, at first glance, it's not very, I would say, optimistic.
All right, Spencer.
Well, I find it interesting because you remember a few years ago when the news was that Josh McDaniels might be going to the Colts and he might be getting another head coaching job or anything, and then that dissipated. When the news started coming out of, some other teams could be looking at Josh Daniels for the head coaching vacancies, I thought, okay, this might be another second situation where somebody jumps the gun, reports, hey, Josh McDaniels is going to take a job with the Raiders, and actually turns out that he backs out last second and stays with Bill Belichick. And obviously, we're in the situation we are now. And you're right, Steve. It's absolutely a huge loss for Belichick, because what was the consistent factor within all the times that the Patriots went deep into the playoffs or all the way to the Super Bowl? Josh McDaniels. That was the consistency. But in terms of Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, I think it's interesting because obviously Matt Patricia knows that system. He's worked under Belichick before, and reading some of the quotes that Bill Belichick has talked about not knowing yet who's going to be the offensive coordinator or not putting any specific labels on him yet. I find that interesting in that regard, but it's interesting to see the kind of comparisons with the guys slipping my mind. The one, Hugh Jackson, when everyone thought he's not going to get a coaching job again. There's no way he's going to get into coaching, and then he's an assistant coach within the division. It's kind of the same situation here with Joe Judge, not in division, or same with Matt Patricia after having tough, difficult, and very disappointing runs in their head coaching tenures, for them to be able to get a job within a year or 2 years after them being fired. In that respect, it's interesting to see that and show how kind of who is how you're able to get the job you want within this business. And for Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, I think it's going to be especially interesting on how they're going to help shape the Patriots offense, especially because they now get to work with Mac Jones. I mean, Mac Jones, of course, Devontae Parker, as we just discussed. They got a lot of a different system now, of course, with Brady moving on to Tampa Bay and Julian Edelman retiring and all the different pieces and everything in that regard. So I'm going to be watching them and see how interesting it's going to be. Again, the AFC East is a very interesting aspect to this new NFL season coming up.
All right, JB.
You know, both guys. Joe Judge, I have my Giant jersey on, running quarterback sneaks on the wrong side of the field. Matt Patricia, who was lackluster when he was in Detroit. You know, they both worked for Bill before. Bill gets the most out of his assistants, but they don't seem to perform when they become head coaches. So, you know, they're coming back home. I'm sure he'll get the most out of them. It's going to be difficult because Jones is going to have that loss of continuity, losing McDaniel. So it's always difficult when you change coordinators and things are different from year to year, especially with a young quarterback. But, you know, honestly, I wasn't impressed with Joe Judge, having seen him for the last couple of years. And McDaniel in Detroit was horrible, but they were really good under Bill previously. So, you know, he obviously knows how to get the most out of both of them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say about the whole thing is I'll give Belichick the benefit of the doubt that he's won a lot of Super Bowls, so you kind of want to see what he's going to do. But beyond that, to me, I'll take a TBD. Spencer will tell you I'm not usually good at short answers, but this may be one of those rare moments. But I am. So I'll take a TBD on this whole thing. And okay, Bill, I want to know that you know what you're doing, but you got to do a really good sales job on me to believe this dynamic would work, because anytime you change an offensive coordinator with a quarterback, especially multiple times, you could be asked. So.
Yeah, and again, I mean, you know, losing McDaniels, I thought was a huge loss for them, and you lose that continuity with the offense. He's been there so long; he knows all their personnel. He knows the system inside and out. And like I said, I think that the coordinator in waiting is going to be Nick Alley. It seemed like they were grooming him for that position. And, you know, a lot of times Bill doesn't name coordinators, because especially with young coaches, because it takes the heat off them. He did the same thing with McDaniels. There was a lot of heat given on Bill. I think it was 2006 or 7. You know, McDaniels had never called plays before in the NFL, and he didn't name him offensive coordinator, because then if McDaniels had some issues, then Bill would take the heat for it. And I think that's what he's doing there. He's already doing it on defense. You know, just a couple of years ago, Brian Flores was considered the defensive coordinator, but he didn't have the title.
All right. Well, I'll just wrap this subject up, TBD to be determined, and we'll go on to Antonio Brown. Now, you guys are going to like what I have to say about this guy. Number one, judging by this quote, okay, I don't know if he has health insurance, because if he does, he certainly isn't tipping his cap with this. So I don't know if he has health insurance. So for a lot of folks out there that are wondering about health insurance, I'll let you draw your own conclusions about the quote that I'm going to read from Antonio Brown, who's running out of places to go. I don't have to get into the details that he once upon a time he was in Pittsburgh. I believe he was in New England, Miami, Tampa Bay, and the Raiders, and that's where I'm going to go with it. But let me get to the quote, because we have other things we want to talk about as well. Coming from Antonio Brown, I need to get my ankle fixed, but I want to make sure I got an obligation or a commitment from a team. It's a lot for a guy to do surgery without an idea of where you're going to work or who you're going to work for. Well, you know, Antonio Brown, Tom Brady was one of the best friends you ever had. You're burning bridges faster than you can imagine. So with that said, okay, Spencer, I'm going to lead off with you on this one. What are your thoughts about Antonio Brown? Don't you think you should get that ankle fixed first?
I got a lot of thoughts on Antonio Brown. I'm sure a lot of us on this panel got a lot of thoughts about Antonio Brown. Another quote to add to that is he mentioned during the contract offseason was going to free agency and everything. He's quote, I still feel like I could put up big numbers and I see what these guys are getting paid. I just wonder why my value isn't being upheld as the same, end quote. So it's obvious that he wants to play in the NFL. The problem is burning bridges, and in business, in life, not just in the sports world. Relationships get you the job that you want to have. And how many relationships and how many bridges has Antonio Brown burnt at this point? quite a lot. Pittsburgh, Mike Tomlin, Ben Roethlisberger, Juju Smith-Schuster. I think they're still connected in some regard. But Pittsburgh, the New York Jets when he was possibly going to go over there. Obviously, the Raiders. Granted, Coach John Gruden is out, but still Mike Mayock still remembers the situation that happened with that. And obviously, obviously everyone knows about the situation with Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think to answer your question, yes, he should get that ankle fixed before he's trying to pursue a team or anything like that. But I think it's because of his actions and the things that he's doing. It's not an exact mirror, but it's very parallel to the situation that Colin Kaepernick has gone through, where at some point in time, if you want to play in the NFL, you have to bend to the rules of the league. You have to be in line with what the coaches are wanting you to do, what the teams are wanting to do, the players are wanting you to do. If you're wanting to still play and be an NFL player, or you could take the path that Antonio Brown has had, where he's had outbursts, he hasn't controlled his emotions, and then has gone off to obviously get kicked off of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, similar to how Colin Kaepernick stood up for what he believed in. The 49ers didn't renew his contract, and nobody else has really felt comfortable signing him because of his passionate stances, and because the question of what is he up to the MVP caliber that he used to be at this point. So I think it's I don't think Antonio Brown's going to play another snap in the NFL. If any team gives him a chance, I owe somebody's family a dinner, because I did make a wager for it in that regard. But one of the funniest quotes that I actually was talking with one of my friends about is that try not to sidetrack too much, but the NFL is supposedly making a heavy push for flag football to be at the Olympics in 2028 when it comes to Los Angeles. A buddy of mine said, "Hey, I found a way that Antonio Brown could play professional football again." And the idea of Antonio Brown, Olympic gold medalist, that disgusts me. That kind of sickens me to even think about that kind of thought.
All right.
So.
Well, the bottom line is, and you being an aspiring young broadcaster, Spencer, okay, not only what you know, but who you know, but he's running out of who you knows, and you don't burn any bridges, all right? Does that leave anything left for you, JB? I think Spencer did a pretty good job summarizing it and giving us
an excellent opinion on it. I mean, the only gold I can remember Antonio Brown at the end of his career, whether today or a few years from now, if he gets a chance, will be the Steelers' gold. He's not going to play in the Olympics no matter what, and he's become a joke because he can't control his outbursts. He has problems. And, I've spoken to Lee Steinberg about this when I had him on Sideline Sports, asking, what do you do as an agent in that situation? Because, obviously you have a cohesive relationship. You both want to make money. An agent only makes money if they have contract. You know how hard it is for whoever Antonio Brown's agent is now to try and get him a contract? So, the agent has to step up and, get the right people around him, get him to try and get the help, because it wasn't the first time it happened. And if it's the first time, the league will forgive you if you have talent. And Antonio Brown has talent. Nobody's questioning that. The issue is, this is a multiple time thing. And it happens all the time. After a while, you run out of chances. You can't keep burning bridges. You need someone that's going to want to take a chance on you. And there's not many places left.
All right, Steve, what do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think Spencer hit the nail on the head, and we just talked about it. You when you're mentioning relationships, we talked about Joe Judge and Matt Patricia didn't burn any bridges with Bill Belichick, and after failing miserably in their jobs, they have another job. Antonio Brown, I have so much respect now for Mike Tomlin, because he kept him on the semi-straight and narrow, I guess you could say, for a long time with the Steelers. And then ever since he left there, he's been just an absolute train wreck. He went to the Raiders. That ended horribly. He went to the Patriots for one game because of Tom Brady. And then, he blew up on social media and he was released. Brady brings him back down to Tampa. And, it was all... I don't think it had anything to do with the injury. It had to do with him wanting his money. And because he didn't feel like he was going to get his money, with the bonus. by getting enough catches or whatever it was, yardage. He blew up. He strips his uniform off, throws it in the stands, and leaves in the middle of a game. And we saw Brady get his buddy Gronkowski, his bonus money, and he made sure Gronk got a number of catches. He would have done the same thing with Antonio Brown, but I think he's burned his last bridge. I don't see anybody upping any kind of serious coin for this guy because he's just an explosion waiting to happen.
All I'll say about this thing here is this. First of all, if he does go anywhere, I'll make a prediction like I did with Tom Brady unretiring, Steve, okay? I think he could land with the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. I think that when you look at the wide receiver, I know JB's looking at me, well, wait a minute, this one's interesting. But you got Lamar Jackson that could probably use a receiver there. John Harbaugh is a pretty cool customer. So just a gut feeling I had that he could wind up there. Aren't too many other places that'll take him. And you're talking about a league that's brought Greg Hardy back before. And how many chances did Josh Gordon have? Of course, to Josh's credit, it wasn't due to losing his mind or anything like this. So I think that he could end up with Baltimore. And there's only one thing that Antonio Brown is missing, okay? He needs Sigmund Freud. Okay. He needs Sigmund Freud. All right. With that said, okay, we're going to race along to the next subject. And yes, I'm going to Indianapolis with this. And then I want to talk about our main topic for the night. Colts owner Jim Irsay said that the Colts had to move on from Carson Wentz. Let me go over the gist of the trade. And I'm going to ask you guys, we're going to talk about this very briefly, as the Colts ended up trading a first and a third round pick for Wentz last offseason. And by the way, the Philadelphia Eagles made the playoffs, made the right choice keeping Jalen Hurts. Wentz then was traded to Washington along with the Colts' second and seventh round pick in 2022, the NFL draft in exchange for a 2022 second and third round pick and a conditional third round pick in 2023 draft. So I'm going to ask you guys this, okay? And it's just a straight question because I want to get to this TV stuff. We have a lot to uncover here. Was this a bad look for Jim Irsay to throw his former player under the bus, Steve Ballesteri?
I think he told the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, really quickly, as you know, I wasn't high on Carson Wentz last year. I thought that was a mistake by the Colts to bring him in. I didn't think he'd do well. And, there was a lot of questions about his leadership. His numbers on the, at first sight look really good, but there was obviously something missing. That Jacksonville game, I think, was the end of him at that point. But I think, I didn't care for the way Irsay put it, but it is what it is. And I think he told the truth. They had to move on from him.
Spencer?
So the question is, does it make the owner Jim Irsay look bad? And the simple answer to it is it depends on who you are, because perception is not everything in the sports world. In the case of Antonio Brown, it is. Case of other players, it is. But with the owner of the Colts coming out and saying that, it's like, sure, it will initially sting, and people will think, "Wow, do you have to be so blunt?" But then a week or two later, they'll be moving on to the next thing. It's I'm the same with you, Steve. I was not sold on Carson Wentz. I thought that I understood the Colts had a big gap to fill with Andrew Luck retiring, and they tried to fill that with Phillip Rivers, and it didn't work out really the way that they wanted it to. I mean, he was okay for what they were trying to accomplish, but obviously they didn't go far into the postseason. I'm just surprised that they traded him so soon. I mean, I understand that, they weren't sold on how they performed last season. Obviously got eliminated from the playoffs and everything, and Jacksonville knocking them out. But I think if they had maybe given him another year or two, it could have potentially gotten them to the wild card, or maybe in more contention to win the AFC South. But I just didn't think it was going to happen this soon. because you think about the amount of quarterbacks that stay within a franchise for several years before actually moving on. I mean, even in the case of Baker Mayfield, who he had 2 good seasons, and then he's been, at least in my opinion, on the decline, and now he's running out of options for where he's going to go, but is seeking a trade. I think sure, it makes Jim Irsay look bad, but he's saying what a lot of people probably had a sentiment of, especially I'm sure Colts fans were maybe not booing Carson Wentz as much as they booed Andrew Luck when he was walking out of the stadium in that preseason game. But yeah, sure, it does make Jimmy Irsay look bad, but I don't think anybody's going to be talking about this within a week or two.
JB?
Listen, he owns the team. They made a bad trade. Carson Wentz has no mental toughness. He's not a leader, not the guy I want leading my team. When he did what he did in Philadelphia, he personally couldn't stay healthy. He got a bit unlucky with the concussion the second time, but he just had trouble staying healthy, first of all. Then when he was healthy and there was a little bit of competition for the job, he kind of backed down and took himself out of it mentally. I wouldn't want to trade for a guy like that to lead my team. That's not what I want. And the Colts went all in on him. So they saw it didn't work. The owner, it's his money. If he thinks that they had to move on, there's nothing wrong with him saying that. I mean, is it the best look in the world? Publicly, no. But, he's saying what everybody else in the world was thinking except for the Wentz family.
Okay, the only thing I'll say about it is, number one, to take a page out of the late Jack Buck. I was at that Jacksonville game, by the way. I can't believe what I just saw. Well, maybe then again, I must be blind anyways, because if anybody laid an egg at a time when you didn't need to do it, Carson Wentz did. So I was at the game, number one. Two, you know what? I don't like a guy calling out a player in public. I really don't. I think the only reason why I don't like it is other players will be wandering around the league. If he called him out, he could call me up. So, you kind of wonder. It could go either way. Yeah, he owns the team. He writes a paycheck. But me personally, I don't like a guy calling somebody out because I think it's a perception of other players around the league in terms of maybe recruiting. But that's just my opinion in terms of recruiting. This is who you're going to work for. But I just wanted to touch on this a little bit. Now, we're going to talk about the big broadcast deal, and that's this. Okay, the NFL just got a brand new one there for 11 years, and they're going to net $113 billion over 11 years, and each team's going to rack in $321 million per year. Now, mind you, the franchises' values aren't going to go up, but let me break everything down here, okay, little by little, then we can all comment on this. The deal, as I mentioned, was 2023 to 2033, and you're going to have the Super Bowl's divvied out with 4 networks. CBS is going to get 3 of them at 2023, 27, 31. Fox, 24, 28, 32. And then you're going to get NBC, 25, 29, 23, 2033 rather. And then ABC gets a pair of them with 2026 and 2030. You're going to have 5 networks involved. You have Amazon, ESPN, CBS, of course, ESPN's paired with ABC, Fox, and NBC. So those are the hard numbers, okay? But here are some of the key components of this deal. You have the increased flexibility on Sunday nights. I'm sure nobody's disappointed about that. You'll have obviously more meaningful games on Monday Night Football. And Monday Night Football, which didn't have the ability to flex games before, will be able to do it. Of course, the ESPN's got to be thrilled because all they did was invest into Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. So that should help them a little bit. Amazon Prime, and I don't even know where I get the games at Amazon Prime on Thursday nights, but they're going to have Al Michaels and Kirk Herbstreit. And then, of course, when you talk about the coverage over the years, CBS has had the AFC coverage since 98. Fox has had it since 94. And, of course, the NBC Sunday night games will be simulcast on Peacock, the NBC Universal streaming service. There's a lot to bite off with a lot of this. So, Spencer, okay, you wanted to talk about this subject. Okay, we're not asking you to give us a 9-page novel of it or 9-chapter novel of this whole thing, but give me the gist of what you think about this TV deal.
Only an 18-page novel.
Okay.
I was actually one of my side gigs, or at least my paying income, is with Uber and Lyft, and I was talking with some kids in college actually about the television deal, And one of the big things that this television deal sealed to me that I told them that I'll share here as well is that this 10-year deal tells me that television is not dead yet. That cable is still at least alive for another 11 NFL seasons, or in this case, another 10 years. Because if you look specifically at the stipulations of the deal, the NFL is still on cable television. It's just added into where it can be streamed. And obviously, the case in point with Amazon Prime, it's the only digitally exclusive package of all time in NFL media history. And part of it that's not included on this is that Westwood One, who covers all the NFL primetime games and radio broadcasts and everything, they're now offering free radio broadcasts on the NFL app with their new renegotiated deal, which wasn't part of this. But in terms of the television deal, we talked a little bit earlier about the players' deals in the offseason. How about the offseason in sports media for broadcasters trading in between networks? I mean, everyone knew about the trade from ABC to NBC with Al Michaels and everything involved with that. But this is starting this season and going forward. This is the biggest shakeup in broadcast booths that are going to call the Super Bowl. We obviously have familiarity with Nance and Romo, who are calling it on CBS, but now Fox is going to be Kevin Burkhardt and I presume Greg Olson. They're moving up to that number one slot, and then we'll see Buck and Aikman familiar, but they won't call the Super Bowl until 2026. And then NBC, Michelle Tafoya retiring from sportscasting, Al Michaels moving to Amazon Prime. So the only familiar face in the NBC Sunday Night Football booth is going to be Chris Collinsworth. Now, Mike Tirico is filled in some regard, but now he's the more permanent play-by-play broadcaster for Sunday Night Football. So, you're right. It's a lot to unpack and everything, but, what stands out to me is that cable is not dead yet. It's at least another 10 years because sports packages are really what are keeping them alive right now, and there are other sports leagues that have deals coming up for the renegotiation phases and everything, but I'm sure that the networks are very pleased that they had at least a year or two post-pandemic, per se, to negotiate this, unlike the NFL and the Players Association that had to negotiate the renewal of the collective bargaining agreement because it was in a pandemic and the future was uncertain on whether or not they get paid or not. But there's a lot of positives in for me that I could go into, but I'll keep it to only 4 or 5 pages in that regard.
Well, that's fine. And bear in mind that the fact they have a 17-game schedule versus a 16-game schedule. And the only thing I'll say about the 17th game, since we have an opportunity, and then I'll turn over to JB, okay, is now you have the 17-game schedule, so the Green Bay Packers have to play internationally because they're not going to give up a game at Lambeau. So that was the only way that they were going to get the Packers on the international circuit. Why would they give up a home game? The Packers are a great draw everywhere, whether they're in somebody else's building or, they have a great road draw, and they certainly do well at home. And the only way to get them international is you better have that 17th game. So all I'll say about this is, to me, unless I'm covering the games, I have no problem going to a sports bar. But the $1 million question to me is, if it's on Amazon, I'm not going to know where to find it, so I'll have to figure it out. And you know what? I'm going to leave it at that and turn it over to you with JB.
So what I take from this is you see the Amazon deal, NBC, which has Peacock. You're starting to see more and more streaming services come in and take more games off regular TV. The bigger question that in my mind is what happens next year when the Sunday Ticket contract is up, and when AT&T or DirecTV, which AT&T is the parent company, when they don't have a exclusive on it, what's going to happen? What that's going to be worth? Or is AT&T going to come out like they did last time and come through the roof with their deal? The NFL they're going to make so much money, it's ridiculous. And you have broadcasters moving all around, because football is the sport that makes money for all these networks. The Super Bowl, how much do they get for a 30-second ad? It's insane. So, to be in on this deal for these networks, that's why they're able to pay these announcers these ridiculous amounts. You're not seeing that happen to baseball announcers. Michael Kay's not getting, $25 million a year to go call Sunday Night Baseball. But, if you're in football, you're where the money is, so you're a hot commodity, and they're making moves all over the place. Everyone's getting their their umpires ready so that they can do battle. And, for the next 10 years, we'll see where it goes. But streaming is going to be big. And when the next deal, the Sunday ticket deal, that's where we're going to see, who really is serious about it, because that's going to change the whole NFL if it's not the way it is.
Well, then I have a gut feeling that my days in sports bars might be limited depending on what goes on. And the only thing I'll add to this whole thing before I get Steve involved here is whether people say the NFL ratings are up or down, which I don't believe any of it anyways, because of all the money being doled out there. Okay, you're still going to be able to see these games wherever you're going to see them, and it's still going to be $1 billion industry, right, Steve?
There you go. I had myself muted. I have an English bulldog that's snoring in the background. I didn't want to, I'm sure you guys can hear her. She gets bored with football talk. But no, I think the NFL's moving towards streaming. I think eventually we're going to see more and more of that. And as an Amazon Prime subscriber, it doesn't bother me that some of the games will be on there. But back to what Spencer was saying earlier, I mean, this offseason has been crazy for the NFL. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, all the different, announcers leaving. It kind of harkens back. I mean, I remember when it was big news of Pat Summerall and John Madden, were switching, networks, which they did a couple of times. But this year it seems like everybody was switching. So it's going to be interesting. I think ESPN Monday Night Football will be, it'll definitely have a different feel to it with Buck and Aikman. I'm curious to see how, NBC fares now. I mean, it's going to be different, but I think the NFL is, this was a mega contract, and it just shows that, the league isn't going downhill at all. I like you, Scott, I see stuff about ratings are down. The stadiums are, other than COVID times, are still packed. The TVs are, like you said, you go to a sports bar, everyone's sitting in front of the televisions while the games are on. I don't see the NFL being down in ratings at all. So I think this is, it's going to be a much, much different season. We have so many changes going on. I'm curious to see how it all plays out, but I think eventually we're going to see everything going towards streaming down the road.
Not only that, Steve, I mean, you're already seeing it to begin with. National Hockey League left NBC, okay, and then Mr. I have the pipes. Okay, I had to get that in here, Spencer. Okay, you think I wasn't going to let you?
I figured at least once. At
least
once. I'll allow it.
I'm going to say it now that you mentioned Mr. Pipes. And by the way, I'm wearing a Super Bowl cap. Okay, but Mr. Pipes, that's the third reference to it. But ESPN basically and TNT, what they've done there is they've gone out there and bought the hockey package. And of course, ESPN Plus does an incredible job. Although I haven't bought it, I'm not gonna. To me, what they do is they have it streamed all over the place. So, and you know what? Our broadcast is being streamed too. So we're all joining this streaming party. So, and speaking of our broadcast,
are we getting $113 billion contract?
Oh,
please. Scott took care of that already.
Oh, please.
Start paying your guests to come on here, Scott.
I'm telling you. I don't know. If we got a $113 billion contract, I got some incredible ideas with you, Spencer, and my niece, let me tell you. But I won't go into any detail of that. But I knew I was going to get the kid to laugh. Oh, I'd love to see that cabbage. But yeah, just for you folks out there, if you do want to listen to the audio version of the show, 108 Stitches, Inside the Pigskin, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, their baseball show. You can hear it on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which Spencer knows all too well. You can find it on www.southfloridatribune.com as well. So there's a lot of different ways too. This is being simulcast, both, the video as well as the audio version. So yeah, it's amazing here, JB. Any closing thoughts about the TV deal?
Just to me, I'm really waiting for the Sunday ticket deal. I live in Brooklyn in a building. I can't get the satellite dish. Years ago, I was in another part of the city, and I still couldn't get the dish, but they had to deal with the PlayStation Network where you could stream it, and the internet wasn't that good back in the day, so it would come in spotty. I had to cancel it right away. I'm curious to see where that goes. I want to see who the big players that come out and how many partners get that, because that to me is going to say a lot. Because the NFL is going to be cashing a check that you think this is big, just wait.
Well, that's a good way to. All right, Mr. Tom said, do you have a counter to that?
Yes, I do actually, because part of my niche or one of the things that I could kind of rattle off to you is like who are sponsors in the NFL, who are television contracts and everything. So I've actually looked at a lot of articles, and shout out to one of our other colleagues, awfulannouncing.com. They do a really good job of not just publishing your announcing crews, but looking at sports media deals and all that kind of stuff. So actually, in terms of the NFL Sunday Ticket, so DirecTV split off again from AT&T. And their CEO has said they have no interest in renewing Sunday Ticket. They believe it's not viable, which personally I think that's stupid. But maybe because of their business model, maybe they're saying that because of the fact of television, TV going down and satellite subscriptions going down. In that case, he's right. But some of the big contenders right now, Amazon was in the talks about it, but now I don't know if they'll pick up Sunday Ticket because of how much they've invested in Thursday Night Football. Maybe they come in, but Apple TV Plus was actually a huge contender in it. But again, the question is, because they just signed their deal with Major League Baseball and airing some games exclusively, are they going to try to pursue that NFL package deal with Sunday Ticket? So Apple TV Plus is in the mix. ESPN Plus is also a huge negotiator in that regard, which I think it's more likely that ESPN Plus would be the ones to sign that Sunday Ticket deal, which would make sense completely with their package for getting exclusive games on their network and everything. But there's also an element here, because I don't know how much you guys follow hockey, but before the new television contract, which by the way, it was more so NBC didn't want to renew their NHL contract. They decided it's not viable for us anymore. We're wanting to focus on other things and the products, and obviously they forked over the billions of dollars to the NFL to keep their Sunday ticket package as well as the Olympics. So fortunately, Turner Sports and Disney ABC took up that opportunity. But before that deal was settled, NHL.TV was a thing with allowing you to get out-of-market packages and everything like that. So the question becomes, with it expiring after this, 2022 is the final season that DirecTV has it exclusively. The question is, does the NFL do NFL.TV? Do they produce their own streaming service to be able to start getting in revenue, or do they think it's more beneficial for them in the long run to just get a huge contract and have another media company or have another digital streaming service take it up in that regard? But good. I'm interested to see how it goes well with Sunday Ticket. I'm on the same line with you. I think more than likely it'll either go to ESPN Plus, or the NFL will look into it, and with their NFL media productions department, they'll say, you know what, we can produce this on our own accord, and we can make a killing off of this. But it's interesting times for the NFL. I especially love the Monday Night Football flex, because anybody remember those games of the Patriots and Dolphins playing where it didn't matter for the postseason in like week 14, 15, but they couldn't move it or anything like that. So I'm excited for this contract and how it's going to play out. Excited for ABC to get the Super Bowl back, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out going into 2022 forward.
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to add here before we close things out is, number one, the NBC Sports Network went out of business too.
Yep.
So therefore you lost that. So with that said, yeah, you know what, JB, I'm going to piggyback on what you said. I'll just be curious to see what happens when DirecTV no longer has a package and it's a totally different animal. But, Steve, you have anything you want to add before we close it out?
I think we touched on everything. And like I said, this is going to be an interesting season to see how it all plays out.
Yeah, well, I guess the one thing I can really be thankful for finally now is I don't have to hear about ESPN's new Monday night crew every year. I'm sick and tired of hearing about it. Brian Griese got smart, went to the San Francisco 49ers on the coaching staff. I do think Louis Riddick will eventually get another front office job. And Steve Levy is okay with hockey, and I'll leave it at that. So meanwhile, with that said, it's always great to bring in new people, let alone a guy that I have so much admiration and respect for, Spencer Tomset. Like I said, I'm proud of him. You know what? Having you around with me out in North Carolina, and you hanging and was talking to a lot of different people was a pleasure. And I'm glad I had an opportunity to bring you on. The situation presented itself with JB, the ultimate professional, and Steve Ballesteri. Nothing short of a best friend and like a brother to me. So, but meanwhile, folks, this is Inside the Pigskin. My name is Scott Morganroth, Motor City Madmouth. Please be joined by Steve Ballesteri, Mr. Patriot. And we have Spencer Tomset, the man with the pipes. I just call him Mr. Pipes. And we have JB Ellis, the program. Okay. So with that said, okay, Steve, why don't you let everybody know how they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at SteveB7SFG. I write for PatsFans.com. We do a couple of podcasts for them. I also do one Patriot Place podcast with some other folks on E2G Sports. I also am a national security columnist for 1945.com, writing about military and politics, and that keeps the bills paid. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at Steve Ballesteri.
One comment in the chat room comes from Fernando Vargas. He's a Cowboys guy. That's all I'll say about it. So we're not going to get into a discussion. I do make it a point on these shows to make sure that anybody that puts a comment in the chat, I do mention it. So there you go, Fernando. I know you're a Cowboys fan. I don't know whether any of us agree with you, but that'll be for another day. Okay, mister, I'm going to nod my head. Spencer Tomset, let everybody know how they get a hold of you. And I do look forward to seeing my little buddy in just a matter of a few months. Go ahead, Spence.
Pleasure's all mine to be on the show, Scott. At Spencer Tomset on Instagram or Twitter. I've also got a Facebook page under Spencer Tomset where I post all my sports media endeavors and everything. You could find me more than likely in a broadcast booth on either ESPN Plus or at any other online mediums at the moment. Hopefully be on a different network for the first time in the fall. Got some plans in the works right now, and I'll if you follow me on social media, I'll be posting about that opportunity sooner than later.
Well, I love bringing aspiring, young, good announcers on here and have the opportunity, Spencer, to bring on this platform. It's something that we talked about in December, and I'm glad tonight it came to fruition. I know we had some pretty good things to talk about. With that said, JB Ellis, let them know how they can get a hold of you.
JB_ the program on Twitter, at Sideline Sports 1 from the Sideline Sports Network. We got shows 7 nights a week. The main show, Sideline Sports, is on Tuesday night. I'll be on at 11:05 tonight, both sides of the coin with Adam Gold. We got you covered every night of the week, and then, of course, here on Wednesday nights.
All right, and I'll summarize our information once. If you didn't see it, okay. You want to go out there and hear us? You can hear us on Spreaker, Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all the notifications of these videos when they do go up, whether they're live or whatever. You can find them on www.southfloridatribune.com. You can email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com, and also follow us on Twitter at Tribune South. I also, you can go ahead and find me on LinkedIn as well. Be more than happy to connect with you there. So what a great night tonight, Steve, Spencer, JB. Enjoyed all your work here tonight, and I hope everybody that's had an opportunity to listen to this show and watch it will get something out of it. I know we have 5 great subjects, and we were able to spread it out there as much as we can. So a little bit for everybody tonight. So on behalf of Steve Ballesteri, Spencer Tomset, JB Ellis, my name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. Good night, everybody.